Hello, welcome to today's video, and today I will be discussing my favourite settings to use on the Strymon Big Sky and the Strymon Mobius. So guitar today is my American Fender Telecaster, just standard telly, 2012. Everything's pretty much original on it, other than the bridge pickup has been rewound. Just back to sort of the factory sound, nothing special, just done by a tech near me. And of course running through the Supro because that's the only amp I've got. So the other day I did a poll on my Instagram, which is down here, asking you lot what kind of stuff you wanted me to film. Now I'm starting to do these bigger videos on a regular basis, and the first suggestion that came up was, what are your favourite settings to use on these two? Because they are such powerful pedals, they're so versatile. There's no way in hell you can use everything that this thing can do. So I've managed to piece together a few of my favourites on here. There were too many favourites on here, but I've tried to narrow it down. So let's start with the Big Sky. Okay, so the first sound that we're going to go through is just the spring reverb sound that I have on pretty much all the time, unless I'm using a different reverb. And that's mainly just because the Supro that I'm using doesn't have any built-in reverb. So the Strymon's on pretty much all the time on the short spring setting. So this is what that sounds like. So you can hear it's quite subtle, it's not very sort of Big Sky like you'd be expecting, but you've got to have a little bit of reverb on all the time, in my opinion. So that's just sort of my go-to flat out spring reverb. Next one, slightly bigger in size. This one is a plate reverb, as we can see. Quite a bit longer, bit more expansive. This is what I like to use for sort of big chord parts, or sometimes leads as well if I want that extra bit of reverb. So yeah, this is the big plate sound. So that just sounds lovely. Kind of just like a bigger version of what was there before. Obviously it's plate as opposed to spring because it doesn't have that kind of rattliness that you sometimes get, so it's a little bit richer, a bit more digital, but it sounds killer. Speaking of digital sounds, this is the first Big Sky, sort of Big Sky sound. Pretty obvious what that sound gets used for, just massive, expansive, sort of crazy builds. And the other really cool thing that I do with that as well, when you're holding it down, you can sort of get this infinite reverb that you layer up and layer up and layer up. So I'll give you a demonstration of that now. it's working like that, it's kind of working on almost working like the sustain pedal on a piano, which is really cool. You start sort of playing things differently. You know, it forces you to be more creative, which is why we get these pedals, right? So the last sound that I'm going to play you on here is a little bit different, a little bit wacky. It's not a sound I would have come across naturally, so it came about while we were recording a song with Tim Pigeons, a track called You're No Fun, and I didn't come up with the sound, the producer did, and basically it's quite an intense plate reverb, I think? Yeah, plate reverb, but with no dry signal in it at all. So that's what this sounds like. I don't use it for any other track really other than that, but every time I go on it, it just makes me smile because it's just such an unusual sound. It's like you're sat really far away from a really loud amp in a really big room. It's got that kind of... you just can't explain it. It's just really cool, and yeah, they're pretty much my top sounds. So that was the Big Sky. I just cannot explain how incredible that pedal is. It is just truly outstanding. It sounds even better in stereo. I was thinking about how I could do that for this video. It was a little bit tricky. I could have maybe done left and right straight into an interface and not used an amp, but I just want to use an amp because it just sounds better when it's all a little bit louder. But stereo, it's just a different beast. So let's have a listen to the Mobius now. So moving on to the Mobius, obviously as we know it's a modulation pedal fundamentally. It's kind of like an all-in-one modulation, so everything from chorus to Leslie to swells to broken lo-fi radio craziness. It's an amazing pedal, far more competent than its user. But yeah, here are a selection of sounds that I really like to use on that. Starting with just the traditional sounding chorus that sounds a little like this. Nothing wrong with that. Just a fantastic sounding chorus. It's absolutely brilliant. Really enjoy that sound, and it gets used a lot. Okay, so next one, obviously as you can probably see by what the pedal is titled, this is the envelope filter preset, kind of based on the John Mayer Q-Tron sort of sound. So that sounds a bit like this. Brilliant sound. I'm a John Mayer nut. I had to have some sort of envelope filter sound somewhere, and there isn't space for an actual one on the board. That's where the Mobius does come in really handy. Right, next one on the Mobius is the rotary sound. Now, this is a really tricky one to get right. Obviously, we all know the H9, with its MIDI sort of capabilities, gives you a really great Leslie sound. It's not a sound I use particularly often, but it is a sound I really like, especially after listening to Josh Smith. So currently it's set to pretty much just sound like a Hammond organ, like a B3 organ. I think it's relatively close, especially when we throw the octave in there as well, which we'll do in a minute. bit of a wacky sound, like I say, not one that I use really often, but yeah, it just makes me laugh whenever I do turn it on. Okay, so next is a harmonic tremolo sound. I am actually probably going to be buying a tremolo soon, so the Mobius will lose responsibility for this sound, but it does a really, really good job. Ever since I've discovered players like sort of Ariel Posen and Joey Landreth, people like that, I've really started to fall for that really thick, warm harmonic trem. So this is how close the Mobius can get to that sound. Just sounds absolutely brilliant, especially with a little bit of drive behind it as well, or quite a lot of drive in this instance, coming from the Gypsy Fuzz from MXR. No guesses which guitarist inspired that sound? Mr. Posen, thank you very much. Right, this one, I don't know how else I could get this sound if I didn't have this pedal. This is really cool. So, within the Mobius you've got sort of two tremolo settings, if you like. You've kind of got like a vintage trem, which is how you get that harmonic tremolo, that just really nice sort of realistic natural amp tremolo sound. And then you've got one called pattern trem. Now, this is where this pedal starts to get a little bit too clever. So on the tap button, you can tap in any sort of rhythm. It doesn't have to be even, it can just be any sort of like rhythmic idea, and it implements that idea through tremolo. So it's a bit difficult to explain, but I'll try and play it and you'll hear what I mean. Don't really need to say anything else about that sound, to be honest. It's just, what a party trick. So the last sound that I've got out of the Mobius, which just again, a little bit of a party trick. It's not really trying to replicate any other pedal, it's just a cool sound. This again came out the studio with a producer just diving down onto the pedal and just turning all sorts of knobs and pressing all sorts of buttons until he got the sound he wanted. And what it's resolved in is this kind of really cool, slightly sort of vibe modulated, sorry I cannot speak today, vibe modulated kind of lo-fi sound. So I'll start with it off and then I'll kick it in. So, straight up signal. That is one wobbly boy. So thank you for watching. They're the top sounds I use on my Big Sky and my Mobius. Obviously they can do so much more than I've shown you today. I do use a lot of other sounds as well, But if I wanted to put them all in one video, it would just be too long. So they're my top sounds. I'd love to hear what you think of them. If you use any similar ones, or if you use really different ones that I've missed and you think are equally as important, then let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next week. See you later.